everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. I'm about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a beatdown by the Winnipeg Jets on the Vancouver Canucks. One that has the crowd here calling for an early headband. Maurice Et says Natty Hattie equals headband. Greg Johnson says Morgan Barron is playing great hockey. That one was supposed to come later. I missed that one. Headband required. Wild Bill said. Greg Johnson says headband out of the gate. I've heard enough. That's all I need to hear, even with the Morgan Barron stuff, which we'll talk about later in the show. But you know what that means, folks. It means it's time to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Let's do it. I'll tell you, Schickster's got it right here. I don't know that I would ever wear a headband if it wasn't for you folks. But if it pleases you, it pleases me. That's all I have to say. I'm sure one thing that pleased everybody tonight was this game that the Winnipeg Jets played. This was a beatdown of epic proportion. Now, let me get this out of the way, and let me start with a qualifier to say that nothing that I'm about to say takes anything away from the Winnipeg Jets' performance on this night. They did everything they needed to do, could do, should do in this game here tonight. That Vancouver Canucks team did not come prepared to play on this night. You want to talk about the Jets, and one of the things I think that really is their superpower is how they protect the guts of the ice. You hear Scott Arniel talks about that. Sorry about that with the audio there, folks. But Scott Arniel talks about that. Let's start this over again, because I'm just seeing here now that folks are talking about the audio being a little bit off. Great game by the Winnipeg Jets. I thought they did everything they needed to do, they should do, they could do. They're looking great. Their defensive game right now is just absolutely great. They are protecting the home plate, which I think is making them such a good guts of the ice, is what Scott Arniel calls it all the time. Everything I'm going to say about the Canucks right now, that has no bearing on what the Jets here did tonight. You can only play the team that's in front of you, and the Winnipeg Jets played it as good as they possibly could have. So give them all their marks. I'm going to say this. The Vancouver Canucks were a no-show on this night for the most part. There was, a couple pushes here and there. I thought some of their players played okay games. But this is an example of this was the anti-Jets, the Winnipeg Jets protecting the guts of the ice, making it hard to score on them, making it hard to get to the net front. There was a couple plays, including the goal that Neil Pionk scored. If you go back and you take a look at the behind the net shot of that, you're supposed to be shutting down passing lanes, and then there's supposed to be defensemen in the front of the net who are fronting the puck so that they can stop the puck before it gets to the goaltender. You're supposed to have layers of players. 4 Vancouver Canucks players are all sucked in towards the boards where Cole Perfetti is making that pass, and the other one was way over on the other side of the ice. That's as open as I can remember seeing a team play with their front of the net this year, maybe. Like, this was a very, very poor effort by the Vancouver Canucks on this night. Anything that they would have gained from their victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs, they gave it away, and they gave it away in spades. And I will say this, all the chatter, all the news that's going on about the Vancouver Canucks, I went into that room, and it's only one time in there. But I'll tell you this, it felt to me like it felt in the Jets room maybe 5 years ago or so, before Rick Bowness came in and sounded the alarm bells on the culture in the dressing room and it needing to be turned around. I turned to my cameraman and I'd said, does this not remind you of something? And he had the exact same thought. I think that team is in trouble. I think that team's culture is shot and needs like a revitalization or changes in the dressing room or whatever. It's only one time, right? Yeah, you cannot take what I'm saying right now and, stamp it into concrete or chisel it into stone, because you should be listening to the people who are closer and around that team more often. But all I can say is that was a bit of an eerie feeling for me to go in there, because it felt like what I felt before, and that's a dressing room that had a culture that just was not conducive to a team winning. That's what I saw on this night. Let's get back to the Jets, though. Their lines, the way that they have them structured now. If you would have seen before the game, we did a Hockey Central panel, myself and Dan Murphy, who's the Canucks reporter and the host of Canucks regional broadcasts and some national broadcasts. We did like a little bit of okay, here's what you need to know about the Jets. Here's what you need to know about the Canucks. We also had a conversation that I think you would have loved. It was his basically pitch for Quinn Hughes to win the Hart Trophy. You've heard mine before with Connor Hellebuck, but one thing I talked about is how great the team's playing defensively, how this little adjustment in line seems to have brought out the best in the team defensively. I feel like everything that I said before the broadcast came to fruition in that game. One of the things I'd said is do not touch that top line, leave it alone. One of the best top lines in hockey. They come out to prove it tonight. 3 goals by Kyle Connor, a goal by Mark Scheifele, 2 of the most potent goal scorers in the NHL right now on the same line. And Gabe Vilardi is no slouch himself when it comes to being a goal scorer. So leave that line alone. They go out, they get it done tonight. Let's just say something. And I'm going to kind of steal this line, although I think it's a lot of what I've been saying this year. But a buddy of mine, Razor, who's a Jets fan who lives out in northern BC, said the Jets structure breaks teams with bad habits. That top line really, really picks on teams with bad habits. Great example of that is the breakaway goal for Kyle Connor. There's no way he should be that wide open in behind the defense of that team. But if you are going to make mistakes, if you are not going to take care of your business, that line is going to burn you big time. That's what they did here tonight. The third line, do we call it the third line? I think that's where we're landing, is with Rasmus Kupari as a center, really coming together. We'll dig a little bit more into that. But, the one thing that I find is really kind of fascinating about the way the Jets are constructed, their second and third line now, is you've got a really, really great defensive player on that line. It's Lowry on the second line. It's Rasmus Kupari on the third line. Then you've got that player that is kind of like the mix of both, has a little bit of offense, but is really great defensively as well. That would be Nino Niederreiter on the third line, Alex Iafallo on the second line. And then you've got, a player that's a little bit more purely offensive in Cole Perfetti and Nick Ehlers. And it's working. It's working with those lines. I told you last time on this podcast, or my takeaway from why it works between Lowry and Nick Ehlers is because they're straight line players. The way that I think it works for that third line, I really do think that Nino Niederreiter is the straw that stirs the drink there. He's the man on that line. You can see it, the way he carries the puck. He's the leader. But that kind of leader vibe, I think, is what results in Rasmus Kupari, let's just get the puck over that guy at the front of the net. I've said this time and time again about Rasmus Kupari. I don't understand why, if he wants more points, he doesn't just get the puck to the front of the net, get it to the dirty areas. Well, when you've got a player like Nino Niederreiter and you can get it to the dirty areas, good things are going to happen. He gets a greasy goal, as his coach calls it. Most people would call it that, a shot from behind the net that goes off the back of the goaltender and in. And if you needed an example of the way a way of playing goaltending that Lankinen did in that moment that Connor Hellebuck would never do. Connor Hellebuck would have had that post sealed up. Nothing like that ever would have happened. Lankinen was out in the middle of the net, but they exploited it again. You can only play the team in front of you. The Jets exploited it in that situation. But speed by Rasmus Kupari, defensive, awareness by all 3 of those players, including Cole Perfetti. opening up space for Cole Perfetti. We've talked about this in the past. I'm not surprised that a game where Cole Perfetti finally breaks out is a game where the Jets kind of run away with it. These are the games he specializes in being an offensive player when the other team is just not on their game. He's very much able to pick you apart. Nice pass to Neil Pionk that ends up in the back of the net, and he starts to play with Rasmus Kupari going to the front of the net. But that line really working with each other, that mix for those two lines, really great defensive player, really great mix of defense and offense, and a offensive player. To me, Cole Perfetti looks more at home on that line than he has on the second line for a long time. And it got me thinking about a comment that was made in our last show. Someone had said something about, and sorry, I'd love to give credit where credit's due. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But someone had said something about Cole Perfetti being in a better spot, being down the lineup. This, I think, makes a lot of sense, okay? Because I've said this before, and I asked Cole a question about it after the game. He gave me a really great response. I thought Cole, his board battles in this game were great. He was on point. I think that he's really good at allowing the Jets to hold on to possession longer. I think he's I think his mindset, what makes the Winnipeg Jets good is a really good forecheck, really good defensively. The goals will come kind of mindset, but just let's get the puck back quicker. Let's keep the puck longer. Let's, challenge that guy with the puck, knock it off his stick, turn it over. Cole Perfetti does all those things really, really well. So really, if you think about it from that perspective, Cole Perfetti is the kind of player that fits in with the Winnipeg Jets. As much of a grind as they are, he's not the biggest player, but he plays that side of the game really good. He just hasn't produced at that second line, which is the point that I've been making for a long time. Cole, great defensive plays, great offensive plays, really good awareness. He's doing all the things the Winnipeg Jets want from him. It's just if you're in that top six role, you have to produce. That's just the way I see it. If you can find a way to structure the Winnipeg Jets where he's a little further down the lineup, it means that you don't have to lean on the kid for point production as much as you do if he's in the top six. But it also means that, you're moving him down and he's maybe facing less dangerous opposition, and maybe that opens up things more for him. Maybe that starts to unlock the offense that comes with the player. But I have to say this because I know there's going to be a lot of you out there who think that I've been pretty hard on Cole. I think I've made a consistent point over and over again. It's nothing against Cole. It's that second line players need to produce, and he needs to show that he can produce. But maybe going down the lineup is the answer. The problem with that is I do think that when the Jets either pick up a 2C or when Vladislav Nemestikov comes back, I think they love the third line that we've talked about not breaking up. And because of the way that they structure that third line, unless you move Alex Iafallo up and you move Cole Perfetti down onto that fourth line, he's got some cachet with Rasmus Kupari. Maybe that opens that up. I've talked about that in the past. I think Alex Iafallo's moved into that spot that I suggested he go up, and he's done well with it. But regardless, I've got a lot of time now to look at a different structure that allows Cole Perfetti to not be relied on as a second line scorer as much as he has to move around. I think tonight is a good example of how he shows when he gets put in a position like that. That's my take on the whole thing. That's a lot of tap dancing for this guy here. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business who's, hey, I'll tap dance to this music all day long. It's about as good as music gets in this business. Here comes Kenny. jumping into the fray, throwing up comments, leaving them up over your music video. Leave the producing to this guy here, okay, Ken? If you're going to do that, leave the producing to
It was a
this guy
compliment
here.
for you, buddy. I was leaving it up there as long as it could be.
Listen. I don't fall for the compliments on this show, because if I fall for the compliments, I have to take all the criticism that everyone, and there's a mountain of criticism and only a few compliments, Ken. So I don't get involved with either. I try to tune those out. Ken, you're looking like $1 million. That's about 3 years ago you got that bad boy.
Yep, 3.
Good looking thing. I'm loving my suit tonight, but I do have to say I don't have the tie on anymore because the barber of Seville got a little bit too close to finishing off the job. I've got a little bit of a nick on the neck there, that blood on my tie. So instead of having it on right now, it's soaking. The wife told me to pre-soak it to make sure she could try and get that stain out. So we're going to see if that happens. It was beautiful tie, yellow tie, had it for a long time. Frankie and the boys set me up. It looks almost goldish, Ken. And I don't mean in color. It looks golden. Like I look solid gold when I've got that on. So if you want to look solid gold, go ahead down to see Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi. They've got the kind of stuff that will make you look like solid gold bullion when you walk out of that place. All you got to do is walk in, ask for, tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, and ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will make you look like you are dipped in solid gold. Ken, what did you take away from that game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, this is the Kyle Connor show. I mean, hey, no offense. It was a great effort all around by the Jets, but I mean, Kyle Connor could have had 5 tonight, and this is a compliment to Kyle Connor. I'm not knocking him for not scoring 5. He could have had 5 or 6 goals. That's how high the quality of chances that he had were. His redirection misses by about 6 inches. It's a beautiful tip, just goes wide. Lankinen didn't know where it was. That side was wide open. He had another look from the slot that looked like it was going to go in. He had one from the sideboards that just sailed wide that was labeled. Just a brilliant game for that top line once again. And, again, overall, the team effort, absolutely solid, Sean. I mean, it was not a boa constrictor game, but they didn't give up a whole lot in that game. And that to me is impressive because the style of play was so much different in terms of the way the opposition was playing compared to Colorado. But man, their defense right now is absolutely stifling. Connor Hellebuyck was bored in the game, like not just big and boring. He was bored. Again, unfortunate for him based on how well the team played in front of him that the shutout was not there to be had. But because again, ridiculous. He was, half a period away from a 7th shutout, which would have given him more shutouts than losses this year, Sean. Absolutely ridiculous. 4-line effort. I know you were talking about it on the way. I had the show on my drive back home. The line changes between the middle 6 have worked out absolutely perfectly for Scott Arniel right now. A little bit of everything on each of those lines, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake down after they get healthier on the up front. But man, sure like Lowry in that 2C hole. Their depth once again showing really well. I thought Alex Iafallo had another strong game. Nino Niederreiter really doing a nice job. No doubt that there was a lot of open ice available out there, but I thought that for Cole Perfetti, Sean, I mean, he gets rewarded with 2 assists today, but to me, it gets back to last game where he spent that time around the blue paint, which I think is helpful when you are playing on a line with Nino Niederreiter. It means you need to go. Like, this is like when you have a guy that goes into the corner all the time and gets into scrums. Well, if you're on that guy's line, you better be getting in there. So if you're Perfetti, Nino Niederreiter is going to the net. So you want to get some loose change around the net, get a cheap one. Goals have been tough to come by. Get to the hard areas, and I think he's done a great job with that. I know you got into it a little bit, but I love the Cole's answers to your questions about sort of the other parts of his game that have been improving, and those have been on display. And, when you give Cole Perfetti room, he's a wizard with the puck in terms of his passing ability. I like the way that he got involved in the game. And, again, I see a player who's building a little bit more of confidence. And for Cole Perfetti, when he plays with confidence, he can be a very effective player. So he knows what's at stake here. I mean, he's a smart guy. He knows when you get bumped from the second to the third line and you're not a checking line player, you know where the next step is. Maybe it's to the fourth, but I think that he's wanting to push himself to be better. And if he pushes himself to be better, then that's going to be great for the Jets in the long haul. It means they won't need to be considering another forward up front. So, baby steps, but those are important steps for Cole Perfetti based on how he's playing. Gabe Vilardi, passing machine again. The kind of underrated play. Yes, it's a turnover by Lankinen, Sean, on the first goal. But Mark Scheifele's in on the forecheck. That's part of the deal, right? I mean, if that play is not happening, there's not a turnover made, and there's not Kyle Connor alone in the slot. So, also love the way the penalty kill has improved since THP Power. That Samberg kid is pretty good. Well, I don't think it's an accident that the penalty kill. Yes, I understand. I think they were 6 for 7 the game before Samberg came back, but the penalty kill is on a heater, and I don't think it's an accident that Samberg has been on back in the lineup and really helping in that area. So again, I understand he was in the box for one of the penalties today, but I see them getting cohesive as a unit, like we saw at the start of the year when he was in the lineup for the first 21 games. And I see a team that's very committed to defense. And man, when they pile up goals like that, they can be a dangerous team, Sean, right? That it's not coming at the expense of cheating for offense, and that they're still stifling defensively, that they can put up a 6 spot with relative ease today. Again, you don't have to put up a 6 spot very often. I'm just saying that when you do that, teams around the league take notice.
I think so. I want to touch on Samberg just because you talked about how good the penalty kill has been. Not just the penalty kill, like just this team since he came back. 2 goals, right? 2 goals allowed. Sorry, is this his 3rd game back or his 4th?
That was his 3rd game back, right?
Yeah. So I mean, 2
Played
goals
in the back-to-back. Yeah,
2 goals in 3 games. I mean, what's going on here? This is
3. 1 in the overtime, but I mean.
Yes,
LA had 2.
Yeah,
sorry,
that's right. Regular strength goals. I kind of throw the 3-on-3 stuff.
No, for sure.
This is a Renny take that is aging like fine wine. The importance of Dylan Samberg. This team. And here's the other thing, Ken. Kyle Connor talked about it a little bit today. I think that Josh Morrissey talked a little bit about it before the game in the morning about, the team getting to where it is now and how hard it is to stay there. But like the one thing that I think this team has run into, and you'll always see this happen, it's kind of a revolving pattern, happens year after year after year. The Jets will kind of fall out of their game a little bit, right? And then they'll just start locking in on defense, right? And it's kind of the Rick Bonus effect. He would just kind of harp on them to get back into defense. And when they got back into defense, they'd get into these really, really tight games, right? And then they'd stay tight, and then they'd get a little bit more, and then they'd start breaking out. And I think this team finally fully gets that, you know what, if we get back to our defensive game, it's going to get us back to our highly explosive offensive game. And here's the thing about it, Ken. I know that better defense creates more offense. That's the philosophy that Winnipeg's been going with. This is the 3rd year of that. But what it really does is it, and I talked about it, my buddy Razor brought this up, and I used it in the show earlier on. But when the Jets play a team, and he sent me some kind of stat, I don't know if it's true or anything like that, but I would believe it. And I've said this for the most part, the Winnipeg Jets typically beat the teams they're supposed to beat. There's been, some examples of it not happening. But if you think of that stretch earlier on in the year when they were playing, 13, 14 teams out of the gate, out of their first 16 games that hadn't made the playoffs the year before, the Jets beat those teams, right? And the reason why I think the Jets are more consistent at beating those teams than your typical team is because I think the Jets just play this structure, and what that structure does is it just takes the bad habits of opposition teams and it boils them to the surface. And when you do that, what it means is if you're a defensive team who plays in that defensive structure but is capable of capitalizing on mistakes like the Jets are, there's going to be point nights like this, right? You're going to get these nights, and you've seen it throughout the year. There, that game earlier on against the Columbus Blue Jackets when they weren't on, and that game against the San Jose Sharks. you are going to get your points by being this team that the Jets are, just because when you play teams that aren't capable of playing up to your standard or aren't showing up like the Canucks did tonight to play to that standard, you expose them, and you expose them in a big way. So I think that they've really locked in on that defense. I think that Samberg is a big reason that they have. I think it's almost like that guy walks back and it's like, oh yeah, here's that guy that does that thing really, really well. Let's go do that thing that he does. And I just think the Jets right now are at a stage in their season. I think it goes up. I think it goes down. But the Jets are fully bought into the idea of being a hard to play against team first, because they know that with that comes the offense, and with it comes the wins.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I'm with you all the way there, Sean, for sure.
Do you want to dig into Cole Perfetti a little bit more?
I think. Yeah, sure. I mean, just to closing the page on Samberg here. 27 shifts for 1708, 2 shots, 4 shot attempts, 1 hit, 1 giveaway, 1 block shot. So just one last thing to tie a bow on what you were talking about. We talked earlier on the year. What were the Jets doing? The Jets were the leading defense core in terms of points generated. We don't think of Dylan Samberg as a points generator. We think of him as a shutdown D-man. But his volume for shots and shot attempts in the 3 games he's been back, I think, has made a big difference. And just his calmness in terms of getting the zone exits, right? Easy zone exits and patience. And you've talked so much about his hockey IQ. I just think that has really allowed the Jets to settle down. And I think that was part of your point there.
Okay, I went kind of deep on Cole Perfetti. I want to hear your take on the whole thing. Where you think he is right now with that line, and where you think it leaves this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it on the way in. One of the commenters saying him playing. And again, I'm going to use the parallel, but I'm not comparing Cole Perfetti to Patrick Kane, Sean. But what I am saying is that Joel Quenneville did an exceptional job in the series against Philadelphia of getting Patrick Kane's line out against the third line of the Flyers. So what the Jets are doing right now in moving him to the third line is allowing him to get more matchups against the second and third defense pairings, and sometimes the third and fourth lines, which, let's be honest, it's an easier matchup than playing the top 2 lines when you're in the top 6, and maybe playing the top pairing on a more regular basis. Now, no offense to third pairings and third lines and fourth lines. Many of them are more than adequate, and many of them are great around the NHL. But your competition level is generally slightly lower in the role that he's playing. And I know people are making the case that time on ice means that those guys were the second line. The only reason why their ice time was higher than Adam Lowry is because Adam Lowry just had a game where he played, among the highest minutes of the season and had to go up against Nathan MacKinnon, which means they are taxing minutes. So in a game where the Jets have a massive lead early, they're not going to run those guys into the ground, even with days off between games this week before the homestand closes. So yeah, in a game where cookies are available to be had, you play the players who need to get some more cookies. So, but in terms of Perfetti, Sean, I liked his game. And yes, was it a benefit to him that the Canucks looked like a team that was already on the plane at the end of a 5-game road trip? Of course it did. There was more easy ice to be had, but you don't penalize a player for taking advantage of easy ice. You say, like I said earlier, I think that this started for me on Saturday by Perfetti going to the blue paint and the hard areas. When you get yourself closer to the crease, that's where the action happens. So if you're Perfetti, going there gets you a reward later on. Now, you touched on it perfectly in your open. I mean, that goal by Pionk is a great example of poor defending. And again, I love a lot of what Quinn Hughes does, Sean, but that overhead or back view that you talked about, it was not very appealing in terms of, either Norris or a Hart Trophy candidate. Again, players make mistakes. I'm not saying you lose your candidacy based on one play, but it wasn't well played by any of the 5 players on the ice, quite frankly. I'm still not really unconvinced that the puck might not have hit Kapari on the way to the net.
I thought it changed direction. It changed direction.
Obviously changed direction.
We're going to wake up tomorrow and Rasmus Kapari is going to have himself a goal, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's going to happen.
The puck moved about 3, 4, 5 feet. So you could tell Lankinen whiffed on it because it changed direction. Otherwise, the slapper from the point. Neil Pionk's got a great shot, but I don't think that goes in even with the screen by Kapari, it looked like it changed direction to me. Anyways, Perfetti in the game, Sean, 16, 12, 19 shifts, 2 assists, 3 shots on net, 3 attempts, 1 giveaway, 1 block shot. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously room for improvement. He's not scoring a lot, but when you say to a guy he's gone 9 games without a point, he should get some points. Well, you better give him his flowers when the guy gets 2 points. So, does that mean he's solved all of the issues with the offense? No, but I like the attitude that Cole is showing. I like the effort that he's been showing, and this can be a step in the in a positive direction for him in terms of what he wants to look like. I think that's his 100th NHL point in his 185th NHL game. So for those people that saying he can't produce, that's pretty good production for a guy who's missed as much time as he has due to injury in his career. And then last year, when the healthy scratches, added up down the stretch and into the playoffs. So I think it's a step in the direction that he would be looking for. Scott Arniel liked what he saw. But again, there's further room for growth, and there was always going to be further room for growth. This guy's 23 years old. So more room to grow, but I think it's important for him to take steps like this. But Sean, as we talk about all the time, he's got to do that in games against Colorado, which why I mentioned, even though he didn't get a reward in the last game, I thought he took some steps towards being rewarded, and the reward came down the road. But again, it's tough to criticize a guy when he goes out and does what he hasn't been doing, but he also continues to do some of the other things, win individual battles. I love that Scott Arniel used the word confrontations, Sean, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that he went down that road because, Cole's not a physically imposing guy. So you have to win some of those confrontations with your brain and your ability to, anticipate and those sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, I liked his game. I mean, is it are you popping bottles and saying problem solved?
He's arrived.
No.
Well, some people in the chat room are. So for some people, that's all it takes is,
I would say pump the brakes a little bit.
Here
but
it is.
This is why, again, I'm not just saying, oh, well, Cole, look. I mean, people are saying, oh, well, you're too easy on him. Well, why I'm saying it is that I'm trying to provide some sober second thought for the players or people who are saying he can never do it. Just move him right now. The fact that he has 100 points in 185 games based on the type of injuries he's had, you need to give a guy a little bit more rope. Obviously, the skating needs to continue to improve, but there have been some overall improvements in his game, but he needs to continue to stack solid games in order to show that he can potentially be a top 6 player on a championship level team, which is what the Jets are trying to become.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think the one thing that we probably haven't talked about enough on this show is the fact that while we've talked about Cole Perfetti, the thing that has stood out is often his kind of going to sleep in his lack of offensive production, which is needed on that second line. But what I think we've seen this year is Cole has really become an NHL player, right? Like, what do you expect an NHL player to be? You expect them to be, hardworking. You expect them to be good along the boards. You expect them to battle. You expect them to, be defensively conscious. Like your base NHL player. Think about it. There's a lot of NHL players out there, and then there's superstars. And superstars do things that only superstars can do, right? I think the thing about this is Cole Perfetti comes in. He has all the points that he has in the OHL, and people are thinking of Cole, okay, this is what he's going to be. He's going to be the next superstar. A lot of you said it, and maybe you'll be right, but let's be honest with ourselves. That's what a whole bunch of you were thinking from. So the bar was set really high. What we've probably slept on this year is that those minutia of the game of an NHL player that are what make you a better NHL player. Like, we can't point to times that Cole just goes to sleep on coverage. We can't point to times where he's not going to win every board battle, but we never look at him and say, oh man, he really gave up on that board battle. Like, Cole is doing all the things that a professional NHL hockey player does. And to your point, Ken, it's like he's kind of building that foundation, and let's see where he can take it from there, right? 100 points in 198 games, that's meaningful. There's not a lot of players
85.
who would what? Sorry?
85.
185, sorry. There's not a lot of players who would have come in and been given the opportunities that Cole Perfetti got right out of the gate. I've said it before, until like the Nemesnikov thing here, he's usually been playing with really, really good, or at least one really good player in his career. He's been alongside Nikolai Ehlers when he hasn't been beside the likes of Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor and some of those, some of the players that he's played with. But to finalize the point, Cole Perfetti has become an NHL player where he can take his offense, where he can take that offensive instinct that he has from here, where he can take his point production. That's yet to be seen, but we should definitely give him his flowers for the kind of player he's become, because he's a defensively responsible player who fits in on one of the most, if not the most defensively responsible teams in the NHL right now. So let's give ourselves, Ken, the Pristine Roofing wake-up call for not talking about Cole Perfetti and just the meat and potatoes of his game and where he's taken it to. And you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing yourself at 204-237-7663. And just a reminder, folks, I know it's the winter. I know a lot of people are looking up at their roof and thinking, boy, I better get that done this summer. North End Rick assures me there is no problem with getting your roof done right now. So if you don't want to get caught in the backlog and be one of those people who wanted to get your roof done in May and you couldn't get it done until September, October, November because the lineup starts, why don't you get it done in January or February or March? Get at it because they can take care of it at Pristine Roofing. Ken, you want to give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Sure. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, you should be contacting our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of our fine community, including this podcast.
Yeah, Jeff Kabili says Rennie's giving himself and Kenny a Pristine Roofing wake-up call. I think I tuned into the wrong show because Paul R. probably has it right here when he says Vancouver players completely gave up on that third goal. KFC could have had 2 or 3 rebounds if that first shot hadn't gone in. Sad effort by the Canucks there. No doubt at the tail end of that road trip, the Canucks needed a Pristine Roofing wake-up call. And let's be honest with ourselves. They'd lost 4 of their last 5 games coming in here. The Vancouver Canucks are, that win that they got, which was somewhat unexpected because they're traveling problems, but that win that they got in Toronto, I think kind of helped them change the narrative. This just changes the narrative right back. Ken, I talked about what I heard in that dressing room. Ken was not in there, but I texted him right away. That does not seem like a healthy room, a healthy team to me. I'd said it, if I had stock in the Vancouver Canucks, I would be selling that stock right now, no doubt.
Which is crazy when you consider how calm and thoughtful Rick Tocchet was again today, right?
God,
just unbelievable insight from Tocchet on Josh Morrissey and the game that he's growing into, and great reminder that Rick Tocchet will be an assistant coach on John Cooper's staff for Team Canada at the Four Nations face-off. And he's jacked about it. And I loved hearing Rick so excited. And again, this is a guy who played in the 1987 Canada Cup, saw what it was like when Gretzky and Lemieux played together internationally for the first time. So he's jazzed about McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby. The list goes on and on. He's excited for Morrissey to be there, maybe playing with Makar. I mean, man, I just quickly, there's a lot of toxicity around the Canucks, but it sure is not coming
from the head coach. Coming from their head coach.
He is sure handling this, what kind of storm incredibly well.
Yeah, you could see him on the bench today, like holding it together. That's something else. Okay, sorry, I wanted to bring this up here. So let's just get to this because people want to talk about this every single show. Did Logan Stanley not close as much as he could have on that goal? Sure, but this is ridiculous. Alex99 says the fans boo Stanley because he's the reason why Helly lost his shutout. Come on. Like Ken was talking about Connor Hellebuyck being bored in this game. That shot and where it comes from, it's not a great angle. There's basically only one place he can go. You are okay with giving up that shot quite often in the
Yeah.
end. It's not like they let him walk right down Main Street and put one by him here. If this is where you've got to in your criticism of a player, that the goaltender that the vast majority of you think is the best goaltender of all time can't stop that shot from there, and it's Logan Stanley's fault that he lost the shutout. Come on, people. That's a wake-up call right there in itself. It's like, listen, I'm not saying that Logan Stanley played that perfectly. He could have closed better. For sure he could have. But trying to hang the loss of a shutout and not give some credit to Connor Hellebuck and his ability to stop that shot from there and throw it all on Logan Stanley, that's just piling on. That's not fair.
And it's a good play by Höglander. Again, I don't love how Stanley played it. I mean, he kind of bobbles the puck.
No,
but
and neither do
play.
I.
And Höglander, like, flicked it over his stick, and then again, Höglander's a faster player, so he got past him. Now, again, I'm not defending Stanley, but I mean, yes, I mean, that's a wrist shot from the middle, closer to the top of the circle, right? I mean,
yeah.
Again, I think that Connor was bored, and again, I don't think that Stanley played it particularly well, but I mean, Connor wants most of the goals he had back. I don't think he's going to be saying he got beaten by a perfect shot there.
Scardy says, Stanley turned the puck over in his own zone. So what's the argument here? Every single puck turned over in their own zone ends up in the back of the net. Like, this is what happens in hockey. Not every player is perfect. And believe me, you know where Ken and I stand on Stanley. You know where we think, like, I'll say it right now. I think that the Jets' top 6 defensemen, as it stands right now, is Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello, Samberg, and Pionk. And then I think you're throwing in Fleury is the 5th of that. And the way Coughlin's been going, I'm like wanting to see more of Coughlin. So by no means am I a guy who's trying to sell you that Logan Stanley should be getting more and more opportunity. But okay, so he turned over the puck in his zone. Like, no other player's ever done that before. Come on. There was plenty of opportunity for Connor Hellebuck to stop that shot. So anyone trying to pile on in that situation.
And that wasn't what led to the goal. It was a high flip in the neutral zone that he caught at the blue line and bobbled, and then it was flipped past his stick by Höglander. Anyways, and for those folks asking, Hayden Fleury has been skating in a regular jersey. Scott O'Neill said he may be available as early as Thursday, and sounded like definitely by the weekend. I think we're going to see Hayden Fleury either Thursday or Saturday. So see how it goes the next few days here, and just may as well go to Villy right away if we're talking about defense. Sean, I like the fact that he got a few touches on the power play. I think it helped his game. But I mean, again, I didn't see I saw nothing wrong with Heinola's game, but it was another opportunity for him to take a big step forward and like plant his stake into the ground. And I sort of saw more of the same.
Yeah, here, and Charlie Dufault is saying, Sean, I think it's the amount of goof up Stanley was responsible in the past that has people upset. I get it. I understand that. The amount of mistakes that pile up are the reason I don't have him in my top 6. I'm not saying anything different than people here, but what I'm not going to do is say that Connor Hellebuck and anyone else on the ice had no responsibility to stop that shot because Logan Stanley made a mistake. That's ridiculous. That's piling on, in my opinion. And so it's like, in the end, these are all human beings. What it comes down to, and like the whole idea of there's a segment of Jets fans that have turned Logan Stanley into a punching bag, where like every single mistake he makes is magnified, and that's why there's no shutout here tonight. Like, come on, let's get it together here. That said, I do want to say, because I think the two kind of go hand in hand, Ville Heinola, I thought, had a great night tonight, Ken. There's one play that stands out to me that I really liked. He's got Heinen dumps the puck in. Ville Heinola goes back to retrieve that puck, and this is just one play, but it's one of the plays that I look at from him that I think he's struggled with in the past. When a guy can come in and lean on him, he goes back, scoops the puck, throws a little bit of a deceptive move, and then turns to the right to go in behind the net. Danton Heinen comes after him with all kinds of speed, but the little deceptive move that he makes in that situation, Heinola, allows him to get his shoulder ahead of that of Danton Heinen, and then he just rides it out. The player is leaning on him, trying to take him into the boards, and Ville Heinola just very calmly rides that, comes out the corner, skates the puck right out of the zone, makes a really great pass, cross ice in the process. that's the part of his game that once he is able to get to the neutral zone, he's able to exploit that great passing. I saw him jump up into the play. There's a nice one where Mark Scheifele feeds him for a one-timer on kind of one of those churning plays that the Jets had. But I saw the things that make Ville Heinola the player that the Jets went out and drafted and the player that they want him to be. If he can start being that player that's able to handle that pressure, that's able to turn the puck up ice and get it out, and then do the passing that he does out of his zone in the neutral zone and do it more often without getting caught, he's starting to be the player that so many people here have been wishing that he would be.
Yeah, and maybe again I should have given a little more credit. I liked Ville's game. There was he had a bad grenade pass to Stanley, I think, on one of the first 2 or 3 shifts of the game. But I felt like this is exactly what I asked Scott Arniel about in the morning with Nemesnikov out. Heinola had a chance to get some touches on that second power play unit, and for me, a guy like Ville, in order for him to be effective and start getting some points to go along with the improved defensive play, is to get those power play touches. And I thought he was a little bit more active, involved, getting to the net. Like, I liked the way that he skated. But again, I also still think that he's trying to get comfortable on the right hand side, which is somewhere he hasn't played a ton of. So, I'd like to see Coghlan and Heinola have one more spin together. Whatever that means, and then we'll see if Fleury's ready to play the Flames on Saturday night. But let's just see what happens in the next few days here.
I do want to touch on something before we do that. I'm just going to go, and I probably gave this award at the same time, but just the lines going together. I thought there was a payoff again, second straight night, a payoff with those lines. It's one of the things that I pitched before the game on Hockey Central when I talked about getting a second look at these new look lines of the Winnipeg Jets. Really did pay off, really paid off for Cole Perfetti, really paid off for Kapari, 2 guys who have struggled to score. That's worked for them. And hey, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Ken, I want to talk about the Morrissey Hughes kind of showdown here tonight, what you saw out of it, what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, Josh was on for 2 even strength goals for. I mean, he was not as active in the game as some of them, but he didn't have to be, and that was more dictated by the way that the score was itself. I didn't really. I mean, again, I love all the improvements that Quinn Hughes has been making. Even on a bad night, he has 2 shots on goal and 11 shot attempts. Sean, 11 shot attempts from one of the only guys generating any offense on the ice by the Vancouver Canucks. Perfetti, Morrissey, 2 shots on goal himself, 1 hit, 1 takeaway, 27 shifts for 23:08. Again, I liked Josh's game, but it wasn't one of those dominant games where he had to put his fingerprints all over it. This is another great example. He got a touch on that power play where the Jets scored the power play goal. He doesn't get an assist because 2 other guys touched the puck, but he got it. He did his job in terms of his facilitation on the power play when they were able to cash in on the Scheifele marker. So even though he doesn't get a point. Again, I wrote about this in the Winnipeg Free Press as my pregame story today. There's definitely a mutual admiration society. Josh Morrissey talked about Quinn Hughes, the things that he's admired about his game in terms of his ability to walk the line, make plays, his elusive skating ability. And Sean, if we're looking at where Josh's improvements in his game have come over the last 3 years, they are exactly in those areas where he has been appreciative of watching Quinn Hughes, right? I mean, those are the things that he does. He dances on the line, makes incredible plays, his mobility, but it's his ability to check. And now, some of the fellow voters in the Professional Hockey Writers Association, one of their qualities that they want to see in a Norris Trophy winning defenseman is killing penalties. And up until this year, Josh hasn't killed a lot of those penalties. Now he is, and it's one of the things that I think has bridged the gap. Josh himself this morning, he's a very humble guy, but he said everyone in the league is chasing Makar and Hughes, and he's one of those players. But I think he's really bridged the gap in a lot of ways, especially with his defensive game. And that's one of the reasons why I think he's still firmly in the conversation to be at least a finalist, and then see what happens from there.
The one thing I'll say about this, because we get to see the Jets against Cale Makar, and then we get to see the Jets against Quinn Hughes afterwards. Josh Morrissey cannot do what those players do offensively. Okay. Now he can do a lot. He's phenomenal. This is by no means me, throwing shade at him, right? But I'll tell you this, there was a number of plays in the game against the Jets that Cale Makar got caught defensively by the Jets. And if I look to you did a good example of talking about them. Quinn Hughes, there's times where he's getting caught defensively, but I would say this, caught defensively in ways that I do not remember Josh Morrissey getting caught defensively this year. And it just comes back to it. I think a lot of times people look and they think because of Josh's size, they just don't think that he can be thought of as one of these great defenders. But I'm going to say this, I do not think that there's a better mix of offense and defense in the NHL than Josh Morrissey. Now, you're always going to prioritize, those defensemen that have offense. That's the way it's always been. Live with it, people. I know that there's going to be a litany of people who are going to come in here and be like, the Norris Trophy should be this, or you should split up the award, and there should be an offensive defenseman and a defensive defenseman. I still don't know that would help Josh out, because he's kind of like the perfect fusion of the two. And maybe that's what the award should be handed out for. But the fact of the matter is, eye-popping stuff is what wins awards in hockey. You take a look at what Connor Hellebuck is doing, it's eye-popping. That's why we're talking about him for the Hart Trophy. You take a look at what Nathan McKinnon did last year, it's eye-popping, right? Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes are eye-popping defensemen, but they don't defend as good as Josh Morrissey does. And I will go to my death saying that. They do not. They cannot defend the way that those players defend. I don't know if it has something to do with about how much time they spend on offense or the risks that they take. I didn't really think Quinn Hughes had a terrible game tonight. I thought, he made some mistakes, but I think that that's who Quinn Hughes is, right? It's magnified in a game like this because it's the Jets and because they're not scoring a lot, because the Jets are scoring. But he still did those moves along the line that wow you, and he still did give the Canucks probably their best like chances at scoring today. Dan Murphy said it before. He went on the list of stats that he took away where their numbers with him on the ice are like they have like 300 more shots, and without him, sorry, I'm gonna botch this, but take it in whatever scale you want. When he's on the ice, they get their shot share is like 300 up, and when he's not, it's like 200 down. Like they literally are Dan Murphy said it best. The Canucks with Quinn Hughes are a team last year that was challenging for tops in the entire NHL for a good chunk of the season, and this year are a playoff team, which remember some of the days the Jets were hanging around there. Playoff team's a pretty good team. Without Quinn Hughes, they're just a bad team. Yeah, like they're a bad team without him. So he is important, but I will go and I'll say this, and I said it. This is how I said it on the broadcast. As good as Kyle Connor is, as good as Mark Scheifele is, most nights I watch the Winnipeg Jets, Josh Morrissey's the best skater on the Winnipeg Jets. He's the guy who he grabs my eye because of the work that he does in the defensive zone, because quite often when the Jets are in trouble and they need to get going offensively, it's Josh Morrissey who seems to be kind of leading the charge. It's those guys who kind of pile on and really get things going. But Josh Morrissey is, I'm going to say it right now, he's never going to get the credit that those other guys get. But I do honestly think if you take a look at what he brings to the table offensively and defensively, he is the best, most complete defenseman in the NHL, was my takeaway from this game here tonight. Ken, anything to say before we move to the awards?
Yeah, just lastly, and again, we've debated about Hart Trophy and things like that, but the Canucks have to be in the playoffs. Again, I know that some people don't agree with the theory, but again, I'm not disputing his candidacy. And as a team that's within a point or two of the playoffs, he's definitely a candidate. But if the Canucks are 10th or 11th in the West, I don't know. I can't. Even though he's clearly the best player on that team, I wouldn't have him on the top 5 in my ballot. And I know sometimes you don't agree with it, and a lot of people don't, but that's where I'm at with Quinn. I do think it's clear that he is a candidate right now for the award. He would be in the top 5, maybe even in the top 3. But they're going to have to be. They can't have nights like this, and then you say, well, yeah, but still, he should be an MVP candidate. They can't have many more nights like this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, to me, it's funny. I talked about the last show how I got a tweet from someone who was just like viciously upset with me that I suggested Connor Hellebuyck as a Hart Trophy candidate, and the reason he was upset is because I wasn't talking about Quinn Hughes, but I don't have Quinn Hughes ahead of either Connor Hellebuyck or Nathan MacKinnon right now. If not that I have a vote, Ken, that you can't just hand those out to anybody. But anyway, moving on to the Johnson group, got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, it's subtle, but when the shutout was still intact for the Jets, Adam Lowry with a nice block really got into defensive posture and made sure he blocked it with his skate. It was Hoaglander's chance. And again, like I said, it wasn't a great, necessarily grade A chance, but I thought it was the effort required to make the play. So that's why I'm going with that.
All right, I'll take that. That's the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. I'll agree with Ken on that one. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Brings us to our keg save of the game. What do you got? I got a good one for this.
You go ahead then.
Well, the Tyler Myers, I thought, had a game where he was just really, really, you could tell he wanted to compete against the Jets. The rest of his team wasn't doing it, but he wanted to compete. You could see rub guys out. You can see when Tyler Myers, and this is what the Vancouver Canucks got from Tyler Myers in the playoffs last year, right? We all know that Tyler Myers is, he can have giveaways. He can, take some penalties, all these, he can get caught and take penalties like he did with Nikolai Ehlers tonight. But when he is absolutely at the top of his game, the things that he does are really, that's the kind of stuff that you want on your team. Anyways, he was competing. He was trying to get a lot of pucks to the net. One of the pucks that he did get to the net was going in the top corner, and Connor Hellebuyck knocked it out of the air with his stick.
Right. Yeah. That's
and
a good one.
Sent it out. So to me, that was my hashtag. The keg got you. Sorry.
I'm with you.
You have one? You got it?
No, okay, that's it.
Doesn't really matter.
I wanted to give Lankinen some love because he was hung to dry. And I mean, here's a problem. Lankinen's been unreal for the Canucks. Yeah, but because of the injury situation, no, he wasn't tonight, but that's a game that you mercy pull, except when you have a guy coming back from injury like Demko. It felt like Tocchet didn't have any choice but to leave him in there, and it kind of left him kind of out to dry. And I don't blame Tocchet either, but if you don't have a guy who's fully healthy as the backup, you're putting that goalie at risk by bringing him in off the bench.
Anyways, that was my hashtag the keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what I think, matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location, as you know, finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, that would be Glenn Fricker. Glenn, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email, and I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, moving on to your goal of the game, your lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a absolute freeze the goaltender triple deke, and then putting it subtly underneath the goal stick. That honestly, it's my favorite part of the entire goal. Kyle Connor's ability to do this at full speed is absolutely remarkable and ridiculous at the same time. Lots of impressive candidates, but to me, that terrible defense allowed for the breakaway, but great pass to Springham, great pass by Velarde, and the finishing ability is just absolutely elite. And I love how Kyle calmly answers when I ask him about it. That I was thinking about 2 or 3 different moves and just trying to react.
Yeah,
he didn't have to react because the deke was so good that the goaltender basically left him half the net. But then he went back to probably the toughest part to score was where he put the puck. But there was no way that Lankinen was going to make that save based on the move. And I mean, that's, never mind. It was a natural hat trick, 3 goals and whatever, just over 6 minutes. But that's an absolute beauty. And you have to appreciate beauty when beauty presents itself to you in that form.
I appreciate you every time you come on this show, Ken. I know beauty when I see it.
Oh
I
yeah.
also know
Oh
a
yeah.
beauty crack when I see one here. Big Hitter says, "Is Glenn Fricker related to 55?" I think this is what
Pretty good.
Shifley refers to referees as when he gets really mad at them. He calls them Glenn Fricker. Anyways, I'm going to go with you on that because you're right. It was beautiful. It reminded me, Ken, there was like a moment in time there where the Jets kept going to shootouts all the time, and it just felt like it was unfair when Kyle Connor went out there because his hands were just so fast. And then Wheeler was pretty darn good at the time. It's around the same time that remember which goaltender was that he put the deke on, and the goaltender injured himself trying to save it. Oh God, I can't remember. Anyways, it just reminded
where
me.
you're coming from. I don't remember the goalie.
It reminded me of that time back then where it just felt like it was not fair. Kyle Connor just has hands that move so fast, and that was just another example of that. He could have scored on Lankinen 3 different ways in that situation. He opened him wide up. He basically just rolled him back. He blew him over with those moves.
Turned him into a pretzel, basically.
Exactly. That's our both you and I, that's our lamplighter of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, matters what you think. Share with us your lamplighter of the game. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your own, you know what to do. Head on down to 11290 Kenniston. Join them in their tap room where they have plenty of the nectar of the gods down there, and also some great food, great pizzas, great atmosphere, and a great staff. It's a really great place to go, folks. If you have not gone there yet, get going there. And you know who's going to be going there next? Because they've got a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. That would be Crystal Morgan. Crystal Morgan, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, which I know is Crystal Morgan. Send me your email, and I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. I assure you, as I think Crystal already knows because she was at a couple of our parties, it is the nectar of the gods. Ken, anything to say before we get going?
Yeah, just quickly, for those who didn't recognize it, I'm wearing the pin of Rick Rippon today. It was a Hockey Talks Day at Canada Life Center. It's an important initiative. It's 11th year anniversary of Project 11 and the good work that that community is doing. Canucks have been very involved in this as well. In Hockey Talks, Sean, as you also know, and many folks around these parts know, I was there when Rick Rippon played his first professional game with the Manitoba Moose, and he's someone that covered a good chunk of his career. So it was great to see some of his family members in the building today. And just overall, just keep the conversation going. And if you're struggling with anything, don't be afraid to talk about it. It's important. And anyways, it's such a great initiative, and people can get involved in whatever way, but it's important to support it. It's important to be listening and have the ability to listen and share those thoughts. If you're struggling, folks, there's people there, and they're there to help where they can.
Yeah, I don't think I could say any better words than Zinger said at the end of that video when you replace the I with we. To Ken's point, if you're not feeling great, you got to reach out. You got to talk to people because I becomes we. And when you turn I into we, illness becomes wellness. Just what a great line that was. Anyways, thank you, everybody, for joining in here today. It's always great to see you, chat with you, bring your thoughts and ideas into the show. I will implore you, though, before we do go, if you appreciate the conversation happening in this space, we would very much appreciate if you would appreciate the contributions made by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, TCB, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course, the Keg. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to you for joining in here. Great to see everybody. We'll do it all over again on Thursday. Who are they playing Thursday, Ken?
Seattle Kraken are in town, and then followed up by the Calgary Flames. And just quickly, somebody asked, when will we see Comrie again? I think we will see Comrie on Saturday. I think Hellebuck gets a third game in a row, especially it was, a very low volume, low event game for him. I think he's going to go again Thursday against Seattle, and maybe see her Comrie on Saturday.
There you go. Okay. All right. We're out of here, everybody. We'll see you again on Thursday. Bye-bye.